Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to this episode of RF Breakthrough Africa. Today, we are creating an inspiration from Africa's visionary innovators. My name is William Asiko, Vice President for the Africa Regional Office at the Rockefeller Foundation, and I'll be moderating today's panel. Before we start, let's take a moment to celebrate today, Africa Day. This day commemorates the founding of the first Union of African Countries way back in 1963 and marks the continent's strong cultural identity and heritage. This is the inspiration for today's RF Breakthrough. As an African living and working on the continent, I relish the opportunity to celebrate the strides we have taken to get to today's Africa. And today's session is inspired by the former chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Dlamini Zuma's renowned email from the future. Back in 2014, when she was chairperson, Dr. Zuma sent an imaginary email from the future. And it was a concrete manifestation of the Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and the African Renaissance. As we look into the future, we must appreciate today's Africa. Coming up is a 5-minute video in response to Dr. Zuma's email, but from the current day. After that, together, 3 transformative African innovators are joining us today who are the forefront of voices championing innovation. They have seen firsthand the obstacles and opportunities in their respective sectors, and I do look forward to the conversation with them. But first, here's the video.
Hello, my good friend Nkosazana. I send greetings to the family, good health, and best wishes from 2022. I write to you from the energetic, vibrant city, Nairobi, one of the continent's anchor financial hubs that include Cape Town, Casablanca, Kigali, Lagos, and Port Louis. These cities are regional and global capital destinations for companies like Google and Microsoft and are home to thriving, innovative industries. Nollywood is the world's second largest movie industry by volume, generating over $6 billion a year. Mobile money is synonymous with Africa tech, and our innovation hubs are ready to serve the continent's nearly 800 million internet users. Your dream of one economic bloc for Africa has come to pass, dear friend. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is alive, ready to provide easily accessible markets for our farmers, our businesses, and our manufacturers. While Africa is not a country, we are now the world's largest free trade bloc by number of countries. We are showing our unity is here to move our continent and her people forward economically. Our continent is an attractive resource and investment destination. Now we are unlocking that harvest for ourselves first. We are living in the reality born from the dreams of those who came before us. It has not come easy, Nkosazana. We are not yet valued as we should be on the world stage. In 2021, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Southern African researchers detected the Omicron variant thanks to robust genomic surveillance capabilities. Africa helped countries prepare for potential surges and take essential steps to fight the pandemic. Our scientific excellence and our sacrifices were used against us. These are the lessons that are helping us build for ourselves first. I remember you encouraged us in 2014 to think creatively. As we build back, we are speaking your vision into existence. Our daughters and sons are building a future worthy of the heartache our ancestors endured. African scientists are at the forefront of research and development to mitigate the impacts of climate change, even though we are the continent that has least contributed to the factors that brought this change about. They have developed seeds and soils to make them more drought and flood resistant, protecting farmers and their harvests, saving lives and providing hope. Our engineers are at the forefront of building resilient infrastructure, reimagining our dams, our cities, our roads, and our homes. They are informed by the skills of the past, our environments, and use the tools of the present to serve our people. Solar, renewable energy, hydropower, increasing the footprint of electricity, energy, and manufacturing. Our products are built in the knowledge and context of Africa's unique needs and unique offerings. By the end of this decade, we will be home to a third of the world's youth population. This is good news. For Africa's youth, stand ready now. 800 million strong, eager, hungry, inspired, and ready to make their mark. Willing to take the baton on this relay race of progress. More conscious of their Africanness in a globalized world, they are aware that they face a world that still seeks to make them small, dependent, and voiceless. But they are more firmly rooted than ever before in the knowledge of the greatness of the land they come from. As I say goodbye, I am excited to share that we now demand the world to be accountable for what is ours. We are creating an Africa that requires a seat at all tables. As I look to you in the future, what else must we do to ensure that we are on the right path? Till we meet again, Kwame.
Wow, what an amazing video. And how refreshing it is to hear all these wonderful things that are happening right here in Africa today. And it's a fantastic segue into the next part of our session today, which is a conversation with three leading innovators on the continent. Now, even though these three individuals come from different parts of Africa, they all have something in common. They're all leading organizations that are at the forefront of providing solutions to their communities. And all three of them have received funding from the Rockefeller Foundation. Let's hear more about them and what they are doing to move the African continent forward in its quest to get to the Agenda 2063. Let's start with you, Sandra. Can you please tell the audience something about yourself and a little bit about your organization?
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. My name is Sandra Chukwudozie, and I'm the founder and CEO of Salfa Energy. It's a Nigerian solar home system company, and we distribute standalone solar solutions to homes and businesses for productive use. And it's so great to be in the midst of esteemed entrepreneurs like myself. And it's really amazing to share my view on the Africa that we want, because this company was forged as a result of transitioning from an old way of producing energy to a cleaner, sustainable way. And I look forward to sharing more of my journey as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Let's pass it on to Herma.
Thanks, William. Hi, everyone. My name is Herma Gebru. I'm currently the interim CEO for Oxygen Hub, as well as the head of strategy and business development. I've been working at the intersection of management consulting and healthcare for the past 10 years, where really my focus has been on supporting and shaping the strategic direction of government agencies, NGOs, donor organizations, as well as the private sector. Oxygen Hub was actually born out of the COVID need, really trying to address the oxygen need across the sub-Saharan African continent, both for COVID, but also for the long term. I think as an individual, I'm really passionate about shaping Africa's healthcare agenda, and most importantly, about creating an enabling environment in the continent that really allows for and ensures that we can have positive healthcare outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Herma. And let's pass it on finally to you, Gerald.
Thank you very much, William. It's a great pleasure to be among you this afternoon. My name is Gerald Masila. I serve as the Executive Director of the Eastern Africa Grain Council, EAGC, which is a regional not-for-profit membership council of farms and organizations in the grain value chain, established in 2006 for the sole purpose of addressing the food grain challenges that face the value chain from production to post-harvest processing and getting the food to the consumers, so that this food is adequate, is nutritious, it's able to get to the consumers in the most efficient way, so that we're able to achieve the food security goals of affordability, availability, accessibility, and acceptability. At the Eastern Africa Ukraine Council, we work closely with partners and, of course, with our members to implement innovations and solutions that address the various challenges in the value chain. And we are pleased to have had an opportunity to work closely with the Rockefeller Foundation to address one of the challenges in the food value chain, and that's at the market, where we have been rethinking about the smart food markets of the future and addressing those challenges that face our markets now, and come up with solutions and innovations that will make nutritious food get to our consumers in a very efficient manner, and in us utilizing innovative solutions around the markets. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gerald. Really appreciate all three of you giving us those brief introductions of yourselves. And so you will all have figured out that the three organizations that our panelists lead today are all working in the three different initiatives that the foundation supports in Africa. That is energy, health, and food. And so I'll turn now to you, Sandra. So you've worked extensively, as you said, in developing homegrown solutions dedicated to providing cleaner, affordable, and more innovative energy solutions in Nigeria. What has been your greatest challenge and lesson as an entrepreneur in the energy sector?
I need to probably unpack that. It's been quite a journey. It started since 2017 when the company was founded. But even before that, right, growing up, as all Africans are, we are faced by the challenges of our. And for me, the biggest one that was staring me in the face was the energy poverty. Why is it that Nigeria is a country that is producing a lot of oil and gas, reserves of this, and we don't have access to energy? And this is a challenge that I thought initially would be solved by the oil and gas industry, because as a family business that I'm part of, my family is largely in the oil and gas space, and that's where I solve this problem. And so I went through my educational, background and all that, trying to gather experience. And then something amazing happened. I was privileged to join the United Nations in New York in 2015 when the SDG goals were launched. And it began to help me to answer this question: what is the Africa that I want for myself? And I really sat at the front row to see the way, energy was transitioned, and it had to be clean, affordable, and modern. And I caught the fire and I rushed back home to Nigeria to begin, actually, to carve out a business within the family business for solar. And the biggest challenge that I faced, right, was what I call generational thinking. And it came as, this was how it was asked. It was asked like this: what is solar energy? Why do you think we should invest in solar? There's no profit in solar. And for me, it was a no-brainer, right? Solar is the future. Solar offers us the chance to have clean and affordable energy. And the challenge was that when I was knocking on traditional means to fund this business, nobody was listening to me, because they were saying to me, Africa isn't ready for this. And I called this an old paradigm. And that was what I really had to fight. This paradigm of thinking that oil, gas, fossil fuels is the predominant form of energy. And it really led me to begin to look for new ways to fund the business. And that was how I actually approached the Rockefeller Foundation and USADF. And we had to work on projects that prove that solar, in actual sense, is able to really uplift a lot of people from energy poverty. Another challenge that I faced as a business owner was hiring a team, because, I mean, this is new to everybody, solar energy in Nigeria. People are used to oil, gas, petrol, right? And the challenge is, why do I need to move or join your company when I'm comfortable doing something else? What is this solar? We haven't seen a lot of solar penetration. And I really had to spend a lot of time educating the team as to why we had to be new ambassadors for the Africa that we want through clean and affordable energy. And this is part of the reason why I'm very intentional about putting young people at the forefront of what we do. Because without young people, we are not able to challenge the existing generational mindset on the challenges that we have in Africa. And through this method of bringing together young people, educating and informing them on how solar is an alternative for a sustainable future, I was able to really transition and break headway in the energy space. And what I would advise as well to young people in the energy space is that we need to be rule breakers. We need to sit and decide for ourselves the fact that it is important that we are inheriting the challenges of the continent. But the question is, are we able to fight for the future that we want? Are we able to not only pay lip service to this question of the Africa that we want? How far are we willing to go? And that is a challenge I'm posing to young people today.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I'm really touched by how you say you caught the fire after attending a session in the United Nations in New York in 2015 and came back home to make a change. And thank you for standing your ground, even in the face of all the generational thinking, as you very politely put it. We have gotten you to get these innovative solutions out. And we look forward by 2063 when we will have this as the go-to energy solution in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. Let's turn to you, Herma. So Oxygen Hub works to power the production and distribution of affordable medical oxygen in sub-Saharan Africa to hospitals dependent on costly oxygen for multinational suppliers. How do manufacturing limitations affect health outcomes in Africa? And what needs to shift?
Yeah, that's a very good question, William. I think, first of all, it's important to understand what are these limitations that not only manufacturing industry, but a lot of businesses in sub-Saharan Africa are facing. I think these limitations are cross-cutting and they're not mutually exclusive. It's things like the over-reliance of imports. Right now, I think specifically about the industry that we're working in, we're required to import cylinders. We import machinery, face high taxes. And I think it's just because we're in a nascent industry that's still building up a lot of the work within the continent. And so in addition to imports, we're talking about financial challenges, access to Forex, access to finance. As well as even things like talent, right? Getting talented folks to be able to run the machines, to be able to essentially grow within organizations. I think all of these issues are interrelated, and I think not only affect the manufacturing industry and healthcare, but also impact any other business within the continent. What this means is that it prevents businesses, entrepreneurs from wanting to get into these businesses, to stay in businesses, or even allowing their businesses to grow and to actually thrive. So ultimately, in oxygen space to speak, what that means is you have entrepreneurs who start businesses but are unable to grow, whose businesses are not sustainable. And so that's a big part why Oxygen Hub was developed, is to be able to say, well, how can we support entrepreneurs? How can we actually build an infrastructure for oxygen that's across sub-Saharan Africa and is not just in one or two countries? And we do that by, as Oxygen Hubs, centralizing the support that we provide, whether it's things like site selection, helping support them in thinking through their talent acquisition, access to equipment, et cetera. And by doing so, our hope is that local businesses are then able to actually thrive and to grow and to be sustainable for the future of Africa. Now, I think as far as what needs to shift, it's exactly things like this. I think we're doing a small part of it, but there's a huge need to create that enabling environment. And I think that's where donor organizations like Rockefeller Foundation come in, as well as, government. And I think creating that enabling environment to allow the businesses to thrive, I think that's what's going to be really important for the future of Africa.
Thank you so much, Herma. And I know that the Oxygen Hub model was developed well before COVID. And certainly, during COVID and the oxygen shortages that were experienced in many parts of the world, including right here in Africa, meant that having a solution like the Oxygen Hub was really a lifesaver for many. And I'm sure that, this model has now proven itself as the way forward for Africa. And we look forward to your greater success and being part of that journey as the Rockefeller Foundation. Let's turn now to you, Gerald. The world's population has been rising. We've had numerous shocks to the food systems, first from rising commodity prices, and then there was COVID that affected production and markets. And then today, we have the conflict in Europe that's going on. The world is facing imminent danger of food shortages, and Africa is poised to become the global breadbasket and emerge as a significant food supplier. What is holding us back? And what are the trends for the future of food on the continent?
Thank you, William. And you quite rightly say that under the challenges and the crisis we are witnessing today, and given Africa and what we have as resources, indeed, we are poised to become the breadbasket for the world for one main reason, because we have the largest arable land available and even water resources, including a very youthful and innovative population. And everything, all the factors are indeed right for Africa to take that right space. But like you ask, what is holding us back? And we identify a number of factors that are holding us back, which are part and parcel of what we try to address at TAGC. And the first one is around government policy. Now, government policy on food production, on investments to support the agriculture sector, and to really take agriculture sector seriously, and connected to that, agriculture trade is one of the things that is holding us back, because we have the CADEP in Africa, we have the commitments that were signed up, the investments behind the behind agriculture. And although governments made those commitments to put in investments in agriculture, at least 10% of their GDP, that is not happening and is one of the things that is holding us back. Secondly, we have had issues with our farmlands and with the challenge of the smallholder farmers that have small, truncated pieces of land all over the place that make their unit cost of production very, very high and make the African farmer not competitive, as another reason that it's holding us back, that we have an opportunity, but we haven't yet gotten there. Thirdly, our level of mechanization in Africa is a very, very big challenge. And that means that we are still using very rudimentary tools and implements to do our production, when at an age when we should have really been looking at a lot of mechanization and using modern methods of production to be able to be very, very competitive. Fourthly, while we struggle a lot, our farmers do a lot of work to produce food, and indeed, in many instances, we get very good harvests. But immediately a challenge comes in for post-harvest. And the whole issue of post-harvest management and really reducing our post-harvest losses is something that draws us back and brings a swing sort of situation where you have a harvest, a bumper harvest that gets lost post-harvest or doesn't get a good market. And then the next season you have a shift and you have a swing so that doesn't give a consistency in the processes of getting our agriculture going and running well. And finally, of course, there are many other, but for today, finally, issues around investment in providing water for farming, and especially coming up with opening and supporting production through agriculture and irrigation supplementation using our groundwater has been a challenge. And connected to that is our research. We've not done well in research at all in Africa, and I want to put a challenge to the African governments to consider investing in agriculture research that is fit for purpose for us in Africa, so that we are developing our own germplasm and we are doing what is best suited for us. And indeed, those are factors that have pulled us down. But going forward, when you look at the trends, what's really happening in the trends, and going more so looking into the future. First of all, at farm level production, we're seeing some interesting developments there in the process of enterprise selection. This is deciding what shall I produce in my piece of land. And in making that decision, we are now seeing a more informed farmer who is choosing a commodity that is suited to their agroecological situation And with that, they're able to also get the seeds that is appropriate. They're able to, that brings in the attributes that you want in your food that is nutritious and all that. And the whole area about regenerative and agriculture using farm level production like conservation agriculture that is much more taking care of the soil, looking at soil fertility and making the soil even retain more water, more nutrients so that our production can improve. And that's at production level. Going to the post-harvest level and trade, we're also seeing some interesting trends there. First of all, we are seeing aggregation coming in, farmers getting together into farmer groups, being able to pull together their produce. And we are seeing also storage at post-harvest, utilizing technologies and innovations such as the hermetic bags that allow, that work on the asphyxiation, where when you put food in your hermetic bags and oxygen air does not get in, then the insects, the weevils are killed out inside there. And therefore, you don't have to use chemicals that then give you a challenge in the residues after a while, that then becomes a health hazard. All those are trends that we are seeing that adoption rates are pretty high. Up at the processing level, again, very interesting trends in value addition. We are seeing conversations now around whole grain and milling and multigrain, and even the whole conversation about fortification and biofortification, where we are looking at blending so that we can address the changing tastes and preferences, but bottom line, ensuring that what we are offering to our consumers is whole food, is nutritious, and is regenerative. Finally, at the market level, very interesting trends, particularly what we are doing, what at the moment, what we are, an innovation we are developing with the Rockefeller Foundation is looking at the smart markets of the future, where we are addressing the challenges of the markets today, and seeing how do we address the physical challenges, the management challenges of the farm, of the markets, so that the markets where the farm produce is where the market is where the farmer brings the farm produce for the consumer to access. And having noted the challenges that these markets have, we are seeing trends of good new designs of the markets that are more human-centered. We are seeing the utilization of green energy. We are seeing e-mobility coming in for inbound and outbound deliveries into the markets. We are seeing conversations around coming up with mini processings in the market, looking at promoting circular economies around the markets, where we're able to get all the waste in the markets 100% recycled and coming, going to get into feed and coming back again, producing produce that comes back to the market, so that all that circularity comes in, and then it's all digitized so that you're able to have very good management with good data and information. So it's quite exciting that even with the challenges, there are trends that are coming up that we are working on, and we thank Rockefeller for the input in it, because it's really indeed the path for the future.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you. And it really is heartening to hear some of the innovations that are coming up, especially around the smart markets, which was a direct response to the shocks that we saw across the continent when COVID hit and there were lockdowns, and all the open air markets across the continent were faced with severe challenges because they could not meet social distancing regulations. This put a severe challenge on farmers accessing markets, but also on consumers accessing food. And so the smart market was a response to this. And really, I look forward to 2063 when we will have smart markets across the continent based on this model that you are piloting with the Rockefeller Foundation. So well done, and thank you very much, Gerald. So I'll go round to a second round of questions for each one of you, and perhaps we can just keep this short just to manage the time. Sandra, so you've talked passionately about the power of solar and what it can do for Nigeria. But let's click down to what it can do for youth, and what can youth do to engage and harness this transition to solar energy.
Thank you again. I have to say, my young people, it's really unfortunate that we have inherited this Africa. But guess what? It's exciting because we are the ones who are going to rebuild the continent how we want it. And something that guides me is that at the center of everything we do, we need to understand that nobody and no place should be left behind. And I think from this kind of consciousness, we can now begin to build the Africa that we want, that has inclusive ideas to promote growth. And I think when we're looking at the energy transition, we need to think about what industries are the most polluting. And Mr. Gerald said something very interesting. He says agriculture, we have so much arable land. And that is actually true because 80% of Africans are being hired in that space. But guess what? Globally, it provides 35% of emissions. And so it makes a lot of sense for us to begin to deploy the infrastructure to really channel the growth into cleaner energy so we don't pollute through that sector. We have the energy industry, we have transportation, we have manufacturing, we have tech as an enabler. These are areas that we as young people should begin to get into. But guess what? We have this amazing youth bulge, but a lot of African young people are not educated. How do we begin to be able to crack the education problem? How are we able to understand fundamentally what the problems are on our continent so that we as Africans are the ones who are providing solutions? What you find in Africa is that there are lots of problems, and the funding is going to foreign led companies who are raising millions of dollars to really crack these problems. And that's amazing. But the thing is, we don't want to crowd our young people out. We want our young people to have a seat at that table. And we can only do that by educating ourselves to understand our problems, right? And that's why I advocate for us as young people to be innovators. How can we begin to use our indigenous thinking to crack those energy problems? We as Africans should be the ones, our African led companies should be solving these problems. And that's why the work that Rockefeller does is so important, because through my company, we realize that education in energy is so important. And we channel that funding into creating an academy for empowering a lot of installers, engineers, salespeople to really not understand the fact that it is just about selling the products, but how do we change the mindset on energy? How do we teach people that clean energy is good for our environment, is good for our health, for education, and I mean, how do we as Africans leapfrog the challenges of our past? And I think for young people, we need to catch the fire and we need not be discouraged. And we need to know that there are avenues for us to really deploy clean energy across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for that call to action to young people to catch the fire and bring together the power of clean energy and the challenges we have in our food production system. And certainly, Gerald mentioned the challenge of low levels of irrigation. What an opportunity exists there to bring these two issues together: the transitioning to clean energy and the increase of land under irrigation. What a wonderful challenge to our young people to take that challenge on. I really appreciate that response, Sandra. Herma, so you talked a little bit about Oxygen's Hub's model, but tell me, it does make sure that the oxygen is available at affordable prices, almost decolonizing the idea of expensive, high-cost oxygen that is provided largely by multinational companies. How fundamental are locally led and locally owned enterprises in Africa's inclusive and sustainable future?
Thanks, William. I think the short answer is very important. I think when we talk about locally owned, locally led enterprises, for the most part, that is synonymous with small and medium enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa. SMEs make up the majority of the business. I think there's millions of registered businesses across the continent. Over 80% of jobs also come from SMEs. And I think the question shouldn't be how important it is. I think it's very critical. The question then is about how do we enable them to thrive and how do we support these institutions to be able to get there and to grow, right? And I think part of our work is being able to do that. And I think as Oxygen Hub, we've made a very conscious effort, instead of as an entity trying to set up businesses in different countries in sub-Saharan Africa, is to work through franchisees and local partners. Local partners are the ones who really understand the needs of the community. And I think specifically within the healthcare space are working to be able to make sure that oxygen is there at an affordable price and gets to areas that are really underserved in peri-urban rural areas, and making sure that we're building for scale and not just a one-off solution that's just there for a few years, but making sure that local businesses are able to be sustainable and are able to meet the needs of their community. And I think we need to, I think this goes without saying, but continue to recognize and understand that Africa is not a country, and that challenges vary from one country to the next. And that's why it's so important to have those locally led solutions that are really at the helm of the community and really understanding not only what a country needs, but what that specific locality and community needs, and doing that in a way that's sustainable and long-term.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Herma. And again, I cannot overemphasize the importance of making affordable oxygen available in many parts of Africa. The health outcomes are immense, and more so in a post-COVID environment. So thank you so much for your service and your solutions. And I look forward again, as I've said to each of you, to 2063, when these solutions will be available in every community, and there will never be a lack of oxygen where it is needed to save a life. Thank you so much. Finally, to you, Gerald. And before I go to Gerald, I'll just remind you that I'll come to the last session to give you a chance to give your own reflections for 1 minute each. So if you can just compose your thoughts as Gerald gives his final answer. So, Gerald, we have seen, as you have mentioned, the number of shocks we've had to the food system, and certainly COVID and the conflict in Europe have been two major shocks that were completely unexpected. But I personally believe, and it's been said often, that we should never waste a crisis. What should African governments do not to waste this dual crisis of COVID and of the conflict in Europe that is seeing so much disruption in our food systems on the continent?
Thank you. Thank you very much, William. And I think that's the right question we should be asking ourselves, and especially when we engage with the policymakers, because part of the work we do at THEC is policy advocacy to be able to ensure that we are creating an enabling environment for us to be able to produce the food well in most efficient way, move that food from production to consumption areas, and really ensure that the investments are across the whole value chain are paying back. We're getting good returns on investment. Like you ask, what should governments, African governments, do? And a few reflections or thoughts around that. I think one of the things that African governments should do is to address the policy challenges that we have. And I know you might wonder why I keep coming back to policy and talking a lot around policy. And it's just because policy is really the biggest risk and the biggest impediment and the biggest issue that we have to deal with. And so for us, if the policies can be aligned well, right from the African continent, and we are very happy with the progress of the ACFTA. So aligning the policies at the national level to ensure that in each of the countries in Africa, they all can participate in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. They all can have something to offer to the African market, and whatever they offer can actually get to the market. At the moment, there are very many barriers, and these barriers are part of what limits production and productivity and investments at production level. Because if you have a challenge accessing the market, then that's a demotivation for production. And so policy reforms around access of trade, making sure food moves across the borders with minimum disruptions, policies to improve transport and logistics, because right now it's much easier and cheaper to move food from anywhere in Africa to Europe or to outside Europe than to inside Africa. Just to move from one country to the other, the transport logistics costs because of the infrastructure challenges are a real big bottleneck. And of course, connected to that is the issue of still a lot of nationalistic and national view of things at the expense or instead of looking at the opportunity that the African continent offers. So the first thing I would say is policy reforms, major policy reforms across all the areas, the sectors, and I'm glad working together with the Rockefeller Foundation, we've been able to engage the Kenyan government in developing new policies for the markets, bringing in the smart markets of the future concepts in the policies. And now there's a new policy that will guide all the designs, all the construction of the new markets, all the management, and has even provided for a PPP, public-private partnership, to be able to attract investments in the market infrastructure so that we can have now many markets, smart markets coming up and providing that forum or that platform for the food to move to the consumers. So that policy is a very important thing. Connected to policy is that African governments must promote innovations at every corner, at every day. Innovations must be promoted because we need innovation across the whole value chain, from production, promoting things like conservation, agriculture, looking at processing solutions, technologies that are fit for purpose for us in Africa, and making sure that we have a market and a demand-driven process, and even utilizing technology across the whole value chain, technology at production, technology at post-harvest, technology at development, at processing. And we've seen very good trends around that, with companies, with investments that are using technologies, and they are really changing the landscape. Companies like Twiga, like Copia, like Farm Shop, and even some of the work we do at EAGC that is technology driven, like our GSOCO and the GHubs trading platforms, where through that technology we are able to bring farmers together into farmer groups, and when they come back together, they come into farmer groups, then we're able to start enjoying the economies of scale, where as farmers, they're able to aggregate their land, they're able to select one enterprise that they will produce. On that selection, they can then decide what inputs they require, and then we consolidate the demand for that input. And surprisingly, we're able to even get trailer loads that can be shipped to the farmers at even 30% lower or cheaper. And all this goes to reducing transaction costs. And it plays also to the other area on partnership, which is the third item that I would like to recommend that governments must do, is to promote partnerships, particularly public-private partnerships, and partnerships that will unlock the financing challenges. And interestingly, working with the farmers and those that we put in farmer groups, one of the recommendations we give them is that as they get together, they should start doing some table banking, where they contribute money and give one of them in a merry-go-round process. And what we've seen, it has been very transformative, because through that they've been able to save, they've been able to buy land, they've been able to build warehouses where they have been able to have technology, things like weighing scales, like tarpaulins, like moisture meters, like even sampling to be able to get aflatoxin testing. And all these are things that really must be done so that we can be able to turn around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerald, and thank you again. Very good advice in terms of what governments can do not to waste this particular crisis. So thank you so much. That has been an amazing discussion. We've heard so much from the three of you. And now I want to give the three of you an opportunity to give a call to action to people who may be thinking of taking that first and most difficult step towards transforming the African narrative. So you have taken that first step. You are well on your way to transforming your various sectors. And we've heard of the challenges that you've had, but also of the successes that you envision for each of the innovations that you are leading. So I'll turn to you, Sandra, and just ask you for a 1-minute reflection. What do people who are contemplating taking that step, what should they do?
Thank you, William. For me, the Africa that we want calls for a similar urgency like our forefathers had when they fought for independence. And I really want to draw on what Martin Luther King said in one of his very important speeches. He says, I quote, This is the fierce urgency of now. And I want to point that to our generation. This is the fierce urgency of our generation. And the challenge to everyone that is watching us right now in the continent and the diaspora is that we need to take action. For me, it is a shame and an embarrassment that 3,500 people died migrating Africa in search of better life when we have all these resources in our continent. And the challenge is now is that if we miss this boat of the fourth revolution, it will be very, very unfortunate because we have the chance to disrupt agriculture, energy, tech, and education. And if we miss this boat, we're going to leave behind our women in the rural areas, 600 million people without access to energy, our 60 million unemployed youth, and they are not going to be part of this Africa that we want. So for us to talk about the Africa that we want, we need to leave no one behind by taking action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. Over to you, Herma.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is having the information. I think in Africa, there's so much opportunity, as I think Sandra has also been alluding to, for innovation to be able to really disrupt so many industries. But having that information and knowing where to start, I think that's where a lot of people struggle. So I would say really start by having the conversations, gather that information, speak to different audiences, to different spaces to really understand what the needs are and what the opportunities are. And I think once you get to that starting point, then it's very much easier to leapfrog and to really start building towards the Africa that we're looking towards.
Thank you, Herma. Yeah, it's so important to have information, be informed, and then have the courage to take that step. Really sound advice. Thank you so much. Gerald, over to you for the final remarks.
Thank you very much, William. For me, I think we have an Africa that has a very young, a young population, a population that is looking into the future and that is looking for opportunity. And for me, the real call to action is, number one, we should do everything we can to make connections, to start connected to each other, and to start building our identity as Africans and be proud of our identity as Africans and really make those deliberate connections so that we are connected to each other and we are there for each other. And with that, I think there is need for the established industries that are there, whether even those that are SMEs and the large ones, to purposely create opportunities for the young people so that the young people can start getting to try out things to get to work with them. And through this, some of the things that we can do is apprenticeship, where I think, in fact, it should be made almost a requirement that every other organization or institution out there is taking interns, it's taking apprentices who can get to learn the trade, learn the skills, create opportunity for volunteerism, for learning, for the youth to be able to experiment, to ask questions, and to build their confidence so that they can see there is a tomorrow and there's opportunity for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerald. Yes, you cannot be successful alone. It's all about building your networks and then looking for those opportunities through those networks. Completely agree. What a wonderful point to end our discussion today. I want to take this opportunity to wish all of you and everybody who's watching a very, very happy Africa Day. And I also want to thank our panelists for taking the time to be with us today and sharing their experience with us. And with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you giving the time and attention to be with us today. Happy Africa Day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Africa Day.